for me. Blood in my eye, dog, and I can't see. I'm trying to be what I'm destined to be. And niggas trying to take my life away. I put a hole in a nigga for fucking with me.
What's up, YouTube? I didn't really take much video at FinalBout. Kind of just had fun with my friends and decided to not take video. It was a blast. Obviously, I took my Villains Ecotech S14 and Jessica took her SR convertible. Her car ran fantastic. She actually drove it down there, drifted all weekend, and drove it home. The only carnage that Jessica got on her car at FinalBout was this dent here. Doesn't look that bad on video, but it actually goes in quite a bit. I don't know what happened, but she was tandeming with the Chickflicks and Nicole bumped her right there. I think Nicole bumped the wheel and the quarter panel, maybe. Something like that. But, so that happened. And then she also caught, so the Inky RPF ones have a nice blue metal or aluminum valve stem, and she caught that as well with her wheel. So that broke, which flattened the tire. Not a big deal, it actually flattened that one. Yeah, because you can see the scuffs on it. So we ended up yanking the one out of this wheel, and putting it in there and just airing it back up, and she was fine, and then actually drove home on the same set. Drove most of the weekend with top down, and the car ran fantastic. My Ecotech S14 was pretty good all weekend as well, just a few minor things. This nice little scuff here was hard enough to kind of bend the bash bar a little bit, which is why this is sagging now, so I do need to take the bumper off and fix the bash bar right there. That's actually from rear-ending Jessica twice. Once right there, and once right there, you can barely see. And that was just, I was chasing her and trying to time the transition just right to go with my car right by her back end and then back up to her door, and just didn't time it perfectly. That's actually not bad when you're trying to judge that transition to get that close. I definitely felt the bump when I got her, but didn't really hurt much. And we kept drifting the lap, and it was pretty exciting. I also came across 2 gremlins in the car. Towards the end of Saturday, it started running like crap because I noticed there was oil down here, and I took the MAF out and the MAF was covered in oil. So I had to clean out the intake tube and then put it back together, and it ran just fine. Wasn't really sure of why that was happening. Just kind of cleaned it and figured I would deal with it after the weekend. And then at the very end of Sunday, it just shut off. It was pretty much the last lap anyways, so we just pushed it onto the trailer, drove it home, and then pushed it in here. Went ahead and tried to crank it yesterday after work and noticed that it was cranking fine, but I couldn't hear the fuel pump kick on. Now, if you remember from previous videos, there was a problem where the fuel pump had been replaced and the line had a kink in it, and then the line had burst. Well, I knew from putting this wall bro in that I cut the hanger and made that line straight, so I knew that the line didn't break. But when you turn the key on, it wasn't making any noise. So I thought maybe I'll check my connections, because when you do a fuel pump in these, you have to splice the wires together to plug into the factory plugs. So sure enough, opened the trunk, yanked the fuel pump out, and my connections actually were still there, but the wires, the positive wire had just pulled out of the bottom of the connector. So I got my connectors out of the drawer and reconnected it and put it back in, started right up. After talking with Oscar a bunch the last 2 days or so and reading a bunch of the Cobalt SS Turbo forums, you know, the guys that usually run this motor, we have come to the conclusion that this is possibly my problem. So about a month ago at Spirit Peaks, I was shaking the car down, and this had a factory PCV valve on it that just had a cap. First lap out, the cap had blown off and was just dumping oil onto this heat shield for the turbo and filling the car with smoke while I was drifting. So I went ahead and just drilled and tapped the hole and put some silicone on this harness bolt and put it in there to seal it off. And then was hoping that this PCV valve here that goes down into the bypass valve on the factory turbo, because this setup from the factory has no blow-off valve. The turbo actually has a bypass valve built into it. So I guess I was kind of hoping that this would be enough pressure relief in the system. But like I said, after going all this over my issues and my setup with Oscar, we came to the conclusion that there's probably too much pressure in the system to have this capped. So it's allowing a lot of oil to go into the bypass valve, which when you're drifting and at high RPMs and on and off the throttle, it's surging that extra oil probably through the intake, like coughing it up, which is causing it to get all over the MAF. So I went ahead and got an NPT hose barb fitting for this. So I'm gonna pull this out and retap it and put that barb on. And then I just ordered a generic catch can kit online. So I'll probably mount it, over here. The Cobalt guys actually mount it to this bolt right here and just have it sit here. So I'll wait till it shows up and see where I'm gonna mount it. So I'm gonna run from that new barb fitting to the catch can, and then I'll have to have Shane weld a little nipple onto the intake pipe so it'll go from the catch can back to the intake. And then hopefully that'll be situated. Like I said, I fixed the fuel pump connection in the trunk, so it actually starts and runs just fine. I could technically just drift it the way it is, but I do want to fix that so my MAF doesn't keep getting oil on it. And I do need to pull the front bumper off to fix that bash bar. The other thing I want to show you guys in this video, if you've been watching, you know I've gotten rid of a lot of cars. I have a lot of space right now. Recently, I've got rid of the Mark II Series 2 car that had the in-style flares and Vertex kit. Got it for a good deal and just drove around for a while and resold it. Also got rid of the Midnight Purple 3 R34 right when we got back from vacation, so that's gone. Also got rid of Reese's E36 convertible because she decided she wanted something different. We already ordered her a new car, but that's going to be a little bit of a surprise, and we're super excited about that. So once the Mark II left and the R34 left, obviously I started looking on Marketplace for projects and good deals. If you've been following me a while, you know that when I first joined the Villains, I had an LS swapped S15 Sylvia, and then about a year after I ran it with the LS, I got a little bored and did an RB25 Series 2 swap in it. Absolutely loved it. It was my first real RB motor to deal with, and after doing a bunch of research when I got the swap, I realized quickly why people don't drift and race those motors, especially here in the States. A, we don't have them here, so it's hard to get parts and find somebody to work on them. And B, they're not so reliable in stock form. An LS, a JZ, a VQ, even an SR, all these motors you can just kind of drop in a drift car and just go beat the snot out of it and just make sure you got a good cooling system and make sure you got oil pressure. There's a few common issues with the RB25, especially. If you're drag racing, there's a head drain issue. So a lot of the oil will get into the head to lubricate the head, and then with all the G-forces pulling the oil to the back of the head, it can't get out back into the block. So they make a kit to do a head drain, and it allows the oil to go back into the pan for those situations. If you're drifting, you don't really have to worry about the head drain because you're not throwing all the oil to the back of the head like you are when you're drag racing, but you do have to worry about too much oil going to the head still, and also shattering your oil pump. So the crank snout on an RB25 Series 1 and Series 2 only penetrates about half of the oil pump gear on the factory setup. So at really high RPMs, that crank spinning in that oil pump gear, it will shatter the gear. So those are the two main issues with a Series 1 and Series 2 RB25 that scare most people away. When I put it in my S15, I knew all that stuff, did all the research, and rebuilt that motor. Tore it all down, even though it was a good running motor. Took the crank to the machine shop. They machined the snout off, and there's a press-on aftermarket snout that goes all the way through the oil pump. And then where the block meets the head, there's the oil galleys that feed the oil up into the head. Well, Tomei makes a plug that restricts the amount of oil going to the head, so then the oil stays more in the pan and the head doesn't get over full. They also make a Nismo N1 oil pump that has a stronger gear. Some people do the crank snout and an OEM pump. Some people do no crank snout and an N1 pump. Some people do both. I went ahead and did both since I was rebuilding the motor anyways. So those are the three things to make an RB25 reliable for rev limiter and drifting. Crank snout extension, N1 oil pump, and Tomei head plug. While browsing Marketplace, I came across this RB25 S14. It's been on Marketplace for about a year, and the guy keeps dropping the price. And he wasn't too far from my house, so I figured all these cars are sold and gone, and I got space in my shop, and I like S chassis, and I like RB25s. So the story is, this guy bought this car at 16 years old, had it for about 10 years. He had PSI, a very well-known shop in the Portland area from back in the day, do a full RB25 Series 2 swap. You know, link ECU, standalone harness, all the goodies, big box transmission. And then about a year and a half ago, his belt tensioner came off for the timing belt and car shut off. So probably has bent valves. I think there's only compression in 2 of the cylinders, so the rest of them are bent. So I went ahead and looked at the car and made him an offer that I felt like was good enough for him to get money out of the car, but good enough for me that if I bail on the project, I'm not going to end up in the hole. So I'm pretty excited about it. It's got new Origin 55mm wide body, newer D-Max Type 3 kit. Already has coilovers. I do need to get a Villains angle kit. It already has a GK Tech dual caliper setup. It's got full interior. And yeah, the swap's all there. As you can see, I've already started working on it. After doing a compression test and looking down in the holes at the cylinders, all the actual pistons look fine. So I don't think it ever dropped a valve. I think it just bent them. So my plan now is to take the head off, which I've already started doing. Got my table of parts over there. So all I have left to do is take the intake manifold off. The exhaust manifold I'll probably just take off with the head. And take the head to the machine shop, and hopefully it's salvageable. If it is, I'll order all new valves and valve guides and have the machine shop just rebuild the head and slap it back on and put it all back together. If the head's not good, I'll probably just try to find a used OEM head. It does have a nice turbo setup, which ironically has the built-in bypass valve, just like the one on the Ecotech. I believe PSI put that on there about 2 or 3 years ago. He had a nice Durali fan and radiator set up in the car already, which I took off. It's underneath the hood over there. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. It is missing the back seats and the carpet, but it does have a hydro that's not hooked up, front seats, door panels, dash, all that good stuff. GMR, which is a wheel company owned by VR Wheels, just re-released their classic 5-spoke wheel as well. So I did scoop a set of those in bronze for this car because I did buy it for cheap and I didn't buy it with any wheels. The only difference between these and the old 5 spokes is that they drilled out the other 5 holes. It's kind of a good look. Looks a lot like a Nismo wheel. These are 18 by 9.5 plus 12 with some spacers that came on the car already, and the fitment's pretty good. I have a little bit of work to do on this with the catch can setup and the front bumper. Jessica has some rattling in her exhaust, and I'd like to fix that dent, and I already ordered a new valve stem for the wheel. But this is where I'll be spending most of my time in the shop in the next couple months until some cars show up that we recently ordered from Japan. And hopefully this head will be good. Because like I said, RB parts are kind of hard to find. And I'm definitely not going to buy a $4,000 aftermarket head for this car. So hopefully this will be good. If not, I'll be on the hunt for a used head. So back on the topic of FinalBout, like I said, my car did pretty well. Jessica's car did pretty well. Shane's car did awesome. Me and Shane got a lot of laps together. Theron was on the struggle bus. He's got the S14.5 SR car on the team, on the Villains team. He's been on the team for a few years now. Love him like a brother. Drives like a maniac. Really unfortunate though. He showed up here Thursday night, and we went to pull the car off the trailer to bring it in the shop for an alignment, and it died in the driveway. Couldn't figure out what was wrong. Spent all night till 3 in the morning trying to fix it, and then ended up pushing it in the shop and going to bed, waking up at 6 and going to get Oscar from SV Performance so he could come over and help us diagnose the issues with it. And ended up finding out that the RS Enthalpy Tune ECU that he had a burnt part on the ECU inside. Luckily, we found a local guy down the road that does computer repair, and Oscar had another factory ECU, so we had that guy solder the RS Enthalpy board onto the other OEM ECU, and we thought it was all good. So we went down to FinalBout thinking it was good, and then he goes to unload it off the trailer and it's running lean. Starts right up, runs, but he has a gauge in there, air fuel ratio, and it was running too lean for him to feel comfortable driving it. He does have a real nice motor in that car, and it didn't make sense to just send it to the moon and not look back just to drive that weekend. So he ended up sitting out all weekend and trying to diagnose the car, looking at MAF problems, vacuum leaks, all kinds of stuff, and we couldn't figure it out. So that was unfortunate. This is kind of what we sign up for when we all build these cars in our garages and don't take mechanical classes to do these things, and then have this guy and this guy and this guy work on our car over a period of time. You get gremlins. So he got bit by the gremlin bug, and we still had a good time. FinalBout was a blast. All the drivers were great. A lot of people showed up and drove well, and we got to see a lot of people that we only see once or twice a year. I'm gonna go ahead and get started on these turds. I can't do much on that except fix the front bumper because I'm waiting for the catch can kit to show up in the mail. But I'll probably try to get that head off because I'm real anxious, not excited. I'm real anxious to get that head off. And no matter what I think it looks like, I need to get it to the machine shop down the road and have them tell me if it looks repairable or it needs to be replaced. So I got the head off the RB and found something inside the head that doesn't belong. Let's see if the kids and Jessica can find it.
Can you let me see it?
Look all over, Kai. It could be anywhere.
How'd that get there?
It's a rock.
Is that literally a rock?
There is a rock inside where the intake manifold goes. Did not put it there either. Those scratches on it are from me trying to pull it out with the pliers.
You can't get it out?
Well, I kind of tried, and then I thought it was funny, so I decided to...
What in the world? How did that get in there?
I don't know, before the guy put the motor together, but I'm assuming that cylinder just got a lot less air than all the other cylinders.
What?
That's kind of wild.
Oh my God.
Well, I spent a few more minutes on the RB car and got the head off. That's a rock. The fucking rock inside this head. It's jammed in there pretty good. I tried to get it out with these and I can't. Stay tuned for those updates and I'll try to get them to you. But like always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.